Hello! I hope you have been enjoying this fabulous weather. I personally could use another 20 or 30 degrees, but I'll take it. No more snow days. I want to start this video by saying I truly enjoyed reading a lot of your comments and questions and feedbacks on last week's Ed Puzzle and then also on the Find Your Political Identity extra credit assignment. So I've reached out to a few of you individually, and then throughout this video, probably at the end, I intend on addressing some reoccurring questions and comments. For instance, I had made, and I feel guilty about this, I kind of made a, to me, joke like, oh, the education system has failed you. Because we haven't taught you cursive. And I got a lot of feedback on other ways that you feel like the education system has failed you. And please tell me, because I can do what I can do to change things. Also reach out to your local representatives, your state representatives. They're the ones who are deciding your curriculum. And so let's see what we can do to make education better. I know you guys are you're on your way out, right? You only have a few years left, but think of your younger siblings or future generations. I really got some good feedback from you guys, and it made me sad that some of you really feel as though the education system has failed you, because as a teacher, I want the opposite of that, right? I want to hopefully help you to succeed with our education system. All right, that was a bit of a ramble, but thank you for your feedback. Also, a few of you mentioned that not learning cursive makes your signatures easier to forge, and I truly never even considered that it's way easier to forge a printed name than a signature. But anyway, let's continue. This week, we are looking at campaigns and elections. I know back in November, I did a brief break in instruction to talk about elections and voting. But this week, I wanted to really take a look at what it takes for a president to get to that November presidential election once every 4 years. So let's start with talking about primaries and caucuses. Something that some of us don't realize is that campaigning for president starts 1 to 4 years before the presidential election. So our next presidential election is in 2024. People who intend on running have already decided that they intend on running. Why so early? Well, they have to figure out if they have a chance. So 4 years prior to the next election, they are spending money to find out if they have what it takes. Do people recognize their name? Do they even have a chance? If you look at this timeline for the 2020 presidential election, there were candidates who actually filed to run for president as early as August of 2017. And then a bulk of them came about a year prior to the primaries in 2019. Again, remember, the presidential election didn't even happen until November of 2020. And in 2019, they officially said that they were going to be running for president. Some candidates wait until the results of the primaries and caucuses to drop out, but lack of funds is a big reason that candidates drop out as well. Also on this timeline, I can show you when candidates start dropping out, when they realize they don't really have that great of a chance. I got a bit ahead of myself, though. What exactly is a primary? What's a caucus?
How do we choose our president?
It starts with primaries and caucuses. Every 4 years, we vote in presidential elections. Primaries and caucuses are just the first round. Whoever wins moves on to represent their political party in the next round.
So if you've ever filled out a March Madness bracket, it's essentially like that. We have the Democrats all have a list of candidates that they're going to have running, and then the Republicans all have a list of candidates that they're going to have running. In 2020, since President Donald Trump was running for re-election, there was only Donald Trump running on the Republican side. But the Democrats had put forth, I think they started with like 30 candidates.
AKA the general election.
Whoa, sounds like a lot of partying.
More like the longest job interview ever.
Well, how does it work?
Most states hold primaries, so if you live in one of those states, you'll go to a designated polling place, anonymously cast a vote for your favorite candidate, and go home, or wherever. In some states, you can vote for any candidate. In other states, you can only vote for a candidate in your political party.
What about the states that don't do primaries?
Those states' vote is called a caucus. Those are more like a public debate where delegates representing presidential candidates all gather at a certain place on a certain day and try to win the majority of the crowd. Caucus votes are either counted by secret ballot or by having people physically take sides in a room. Primaries and caucuses take place in all states over the course of a few months. Tons of money and media coverage go into the earliest primaries and caucuses because, well, they're the trendsetters. The first primary is held in New Hampshire. It's state law that they go first. Iowa also thinks it's special. It makes sure it always holds the first caucus, even before New Hampshire.
And the other states?
Many states form alliances to hold their primaries on the same day, so they all feel special too. The most popular alliance is known as Super Tuesday.
Okay, so after everyone's voted in the primaries and caucuses, what's next?
Now it's time for each political party's national convention. At each national convention, delegates gather together to select their presidential nominee.
Delegates?
Presidential candidates are represented at national conventions by delegates who vote on the final presidential nominees, based on the results of the primaries and caucuses. VIP members of the party are called superdelegates. These superdelegates can vote for whoever they want to be their presidential nominee. After the national conventions, it's finally time for Americans to vote on the same day in November to decide which presidential nominee we want to hire as President of the United States.
It can get a little confusing during primaries and caucuses because essentially you have people of the same party going against each other. Democrats trashing Democrats and Republicans trashing Republicans. And so an example I like to give would be if we were running a statewide competition for best career tech student ever. When you guys first started running at CTech, right, we would only be able to send one CTech candidate to the statewide election. You guys would go against each other. So clinical care might say, no, don't vote for someone from medical assisting. Clinical care is the best. And welding might say, no, don't vote for someone from welding. Or diesel, vote for welding. Either ways, you guys would be butting heads. You would be going against each other, even though we're all CTech. Now, let's say CTech decides to send someone from DDIM. So this DDIM student is representing CTech in statewide election. All of you who had been saying, don't vote for this person, vote for me, would then probably switch gears because you want to see CTech win. And so that's what happens in primaries and caucuses. Democrats who beforehand had gone against each other, don't vote for that Democrat, vote for me. Now they want their party to win. So they're going to say, okay, let's vote for that Democrat or let's vote for that Republican. You saw that in 2020. Bernie Sanders had a lot of supporters who wanted him to be the next president. When he dropped out, suspended his campaign, Bernie Sanders stood up and said, even though I may have trashed Joe Biden in some of the debates, you need to vote for Joe Biden because you want to vote for the.
So today I am asking all Americans, I'm asking every Democrat, I'm asking every independent, I'm asking a lot of Republicans to come together in this campaign to support your candidacy, which I endorse, to make certain that we defeat somebody.
The same thing happened in 2016 with the Republicans. Candidates who had beforehand said, don't vote for Donald Trump, vote for me. Once Donald Trump became the Republican candidate, they threw their support behind Donald Trump.
Donald is a bully. The man is utterly amoral.
Right now.
Donald Trump will not be the nominee.
Will you support him as the nominee?
Donald Trump will not be the nominee.
In 2020, Donald Trump will be overwhelmingly reelected as President of the United States.
Because in the end, you want your party to win. Also, I want to mention with these primaries and caucuses, none of this is in the Constitution. It's actually up to the political parties and the states to decide how this all works. So a primary is just a regular election. You may remember last year in March, Ohio's primaries actually kept getting pushed back because of COVID. They canceled the in-person election day and they kept pushing it back to a later date. Caucuses, however, had fortunately taken place prior to a lot of the shutdown. So let's take a look at what a caucus looks like. And only a few states hold them.
As the sun sets on Iowa tonight, from downtown Des Moines to the sprawling farms across this state, Iowans gather for the first-in-the-nation votes. Here, caucus day is more like caucus hour. Be there by 7 p.m. or get left out. More than 1,600 precincts in all, churches, schools, even a gun shop and a grain elevator. The Republican caucus is pretty simple. Listen to speeches from all sides, then write your candidate's name on a secret ballot. A winner's announced and delegates divvied up. But for the Democrats, it's a different deal. A representative from each campaign first makes their pitch to everyone in the room. Then caucus goers break into groups by candidate with an area for those still uncommitted. At most locations, a candidate needs at least 15% support in that room to reach what they call viability. If your candidate doesn't make the cut, things get messy with two choices: realign with another campaign or join the uncommitteds and get re-recruited from there. Professor Rachel Caulfield is an expert on caucuses.
Yeah, people get up out of their chairs, they move around the room, there's bargaining, there's interaction, family members maybe trying to persuade each other.
This is likely where the heaviest jockeying will begin, with the Clinton and Sanders campaigns in a dead heat. Whichever side can scoop up Martin O'Malley's supporters could gain a significant advantage. When only viable candidates with 15% remain, delegates are awarded. This complicated system and that 7 p.m. cutoff explain why even the all-time high turnout here 8 years ago was still so low, just 16% of Iowans. That means only a few 100,000 people in the state set the political table for the rest of America.
That's crazy, right? That's literally how you vote. And there are some negatives to this. I think one of the first concern for me is if I worked a night job, like as a teacher, I'm done by 4, but if I worked as a night job, if I worked a night shift anywhere or a second shift, I wouldn't be able to caucus ever unless I called off or had the day off. Another issue I think that comes up is how many of you have been in a classroom and your teacher has done like a stand on one side for this or that. So stand on one side if you prefer Coke, stand on this side if you prefer Pepsi. And then I know that's not that controversial, but then you guys move to one side or the other. How many of you would, maybe you do like Coke, but all your friends are on Pepsi, so you'll move over to Pepsi. Or maybe you like Coke, but that cute person you were looking at across the room likes Pepsi, so you're going to go to Pepsi. And I wonder how often that happens in a caucus. We don't hold caucuses here in Ohio, so there's the bell. I've never participated, and I would like to think that I wouldn't follow a cute person around the room or follow the crowd, but I am curious as to how many times that actually happens. But anyway, after the results of the caucuses and primaries all over the United States, each party holds a national convention in the summer where they officially announce who their candidate is for the president of the United States.
It is my honor to be able to throw Donald Trump over the top in the delegate count tonight with 89 delegates. And another 6 for John Kasich. Congratulations, Dad. We love you.
Together, electing a Republican Congress, Donald Trump, Mike Pence, we can build a better America.
So with Donald Trump in the White House, Senate Republicans will build on the work we've done and pass more bills into law than any Senate in years.
Only with Donald Trump and Mike Pence do we have a chance at a better way.
You can really tell a person's true character when they're happy for somebody else's success, okay? And I think that sense of loyalty and commitment will translate into how he will run this country.
For my father, impossible is just the starting point.
Whatever he does, he gives his all and does it well. His desire for excellence is contagious.
I've seen it time and time again. That look in his eyes when someone says it can't be done. I saw that look a little over a year ago when he was told he couldn't possibly succeed in politics. Yes, he did. We're going to elect a president who will work with everyone to pass legislation that will make our country great again. That president can only be my mentor, my best friend, my father.
We gather in this city of brotherly love to reaffirm our values before our nation and the whole world.
This election is about who will have the power to shape our children for the next 4 or 8 years of their lives.
This election is about which candidate understands the real problems facing this country and has offered real solutions. Clinton understands that if someone works 40 hours a week, that person should not be living in poverty.
Hillary will fight for debt-free college.
And she knows that we can be a nation that both believes police officers deserve more respect and believes that a black 20-something-year-old protester deserves to be valued.
This election must be about bringing our people together, not dividing us up.
That is the story of this country, the story that has brought me to this stage tonight.
Hillary Clinton must become the next president of the United States.
Don't let anyone ever tell you that this country isn't great, that somehow we need to make it great again, because this right now is the greatest country on earth.
Did you notice they're both expecting to win? But that's what they have to do. They have to get their political parties pumped up. So they had maybe spent months going against each other and dividing the party a bit, and they have to bring them together. So they invite celebrities and well-named politicians, and they have balloons and streamers and lights and videos, all to say, let's get this next president elected. And how do you get someone elected? You have to vote. So remember I said it costs a lot of money to run for president? It costs a lot of money to get people to vote. And they get people to vote by having voter registration drives, advertisements on TV and the radio and the internet. They have appearances on different talk shows and news stations and radio shows. And that costs money. We're going to actually take a look at campaign financing next week. This week, as our Google form, you are actually going to look at a series of campaign advertisements over a lot of years of presidential elections. And what you're going to decide is how effective or ineffective were these campaigns, because some of them are pretty questionable. Last week, we looked at party ideologies and the difference between leaning left and leaning right. This week's Ed Puzzle is actually Craig from Crash Course talking to you about how political parties play a role in American politics. And so that the goal of the party is not to influence policies, but to win control of the government. So we're going to talk about why we have political parties in the first place, and then he's going to finish with the 5 functions that they use to reach that goal. So like I mentioned, I wanted to talk with you guys a little bit about some of your responses from last week. One thing that I thought was interesting is that some of you in the political ideology extra credit section where I asked you, where do you think you got these opinions or these feelings? A lot of you said it's common sense. But what was funny to me is that some of you who leaned really left and some of you who leaned really right both said common sense. And so your idea of common sense is obviously different from their idea of common sense. So I just thought that was interesting. I also got a lot of comments from you on the question in the Ed Puzzle where I showed you that table. A lot of you commented on minimum wage, either for raising it or for you were surprised that the Republican side mentioned lowering it. And so that's not a simple black and white answer. And so we are actually, when we return from spring break, we're going to spend an entire week talking about minimum wage because I want you guys to kind of see where those differences in opinions lie. Those who want to lower or get rid of minimum wage, it's not because they want to pay people less. It's because more of the debate on what is minimum wage meant to be. Is minimum wage meant to be a wage that you can live on? Or is it meant for part-time jobs, for students, or people who are just breaking their way into the workforce? And then some of you also mentioned that if we raised minimum wage, then that would lead to raising the prices of different items. And so that was your fear in that. So I want to tackle what that would look like as well. So all this to say, we are going to address specifically minimum wage for an entire week. And it's going to be that week when we return from spring break. The other topic that came up for a lot of you was school vouchers.
EdChoice is Ohio's largest school voucher program. It allows students in underperforming public schools to apply for a financial scholarship to attend a private school, which is often a religious school. The state deems a school underperforming based on the grades it receives on the state report card. Students in kindergarten through 8th grade can apply to get a voucher worth $4,650. Vouchers for high school students are worth $6,000. But the EdChoice program is controversial, and here are the main reasons why. A complicated formula determines how much state funding a district gets per student. When a student uses an EdChoice voucher to switch from public to private school, their local public school district loses the voucher amount from their state funding. And if the state doesn't cover the whole voucher, local tax dollars have to make up the difference. Then there's Ohio's report card system. It's supposed to measure school performance, mostly based on standardized test scores. But many argue the report card needs improvement and doesn't accurately show how well a school is educating a student. Why is this a big deal right now? the list of EdChoice eligible schools could double to more than 1,200 schools due to changes in state law that were due to take effect. Lawmakers in Columbus have scrambled to stop the explosion and are figuring out what changes to make to EdChoice, who should be eligible for a voucher, and where the funding should come from.
One other thing I wanted to mention for those of you who had some questions about the ideology and the left versus right and Democrat versus Republican and the different issues is I wanted to direct you, and I messaged a few of you with this information, to the website ontheissues.org. So when you're on here, you can start with just the issues or you can go to candidates. If we started with issues, a lot of you mentioned abortion in that extra credit assignment. So if I were to go to abortion, it gives you basic terminology. So maybe if you don't understand when people are referencing Roe versus Wade, what they're referring to, you can read about that. It talks about issues that had come up in current campaigns. There are links to articles you can read. There are, if you scroll all the way to the bottom, you can click then on a candidate. And if we click on a candidate, we can see where they stand and quotes they've made on, like I said, this specific issue right here is abortion, or we can switch over to a new issue. If I wanted to just click on a candidate or a current politician and read about what they feel about different issues, so I clicked, he came up first, Joe Biden. I can click on his opinion on immigration, and it'll show quotes that he's made, his voting record in the Senate, how he voted. And so you can do that for specific issues and candidates. So I do think all of that can be really helpful to help you decide maybe what candidate more aligns with your issue, with your opinion, and to help you form your own opinion. You can kind of hear what people of different sides of the aisle say, and really just keep an open mind and know that when it comes to some of these controversial issues, it's not a simple I agree or I disagree or I support or I don't support. There's a lot that goes into this and a lot that affects our lives. Right, that's all I have for you this week. Maybe 1 week I'll get it all recorded in one day. I was really close this week. But again, you have this ed puzzle, the crash course ed puzzle, and then for the Google form, it does have some videos. So make sure you do not start that until you have enough time to sit and finish it. Those of you who have been having some issues with Wi-Fi, make sure you're somewhere where you know you're going to be able to sit there and get it done all in one sitting. As always, reach out if there's anything I can do to help. Have a great week.